Taking Stock with Pimm Fox.
Our next guest, Ryan Sutton, Bloomberg dining critic, has just returned from Chicago. You said that this was your premier trip to this capital of the Midwest.
It was my premier trip to Chicago, and a fun trip it was. I was telling you before, it has all the excitement of New York and all the urban density without as many people in the streets, and it has the same kind of open space as Washington, D.C., with Millennium Park and what have you, but it's not as sleepy as D.C. It's kind of like the best of both worlds, of both New York and D.C. It's definitely a town I could spend a lot of time in, and it's definitely a town I can spend a lot of time eating in because there's some really great restaurants there.
I can't wait.
Yeah, well, maybe, Courtney, listen to this, because Ryan spent some time at a restaurant called Next.
Next, that's right. The problem is, Courtney, if I may, you may not be able to get into there. You may be able to get in there if you go on Craigslist and get your tickets via Craigslist. And
you have all the connections.
But no,
though.
but that's how you did it, right, Ryan?
Exactly. I bought my tickets off the secondary market, just like whenever I go to a Giants game or a Jets game or a Yankees game, I almost always buy my tickets off StubHub. It's just easier, it's reliable, and that's the way things are done now, rather than going directly, because sometimes you can save some money by going below market price, and occasionally you spend a little bit more than face value when you go through StubHub, because it creates a value. A lot of people want to go to the game, and you pay a little bit more for not having had to wait online for 2 hours to get those tickets in the first place.
But just explain to people this idea that you can't call to make a reservation. The tickets are non-refundable. What do you get? Because this is an odd thing when it comes to a restaurant.
It is an odd thing. It's a restaurant that currently serves an old school French menu from Paris 1906, but most people, the biggest interaction they'll have with the restaurant and the biggest takeaway is how different it is in terms of the reservation system. You have to buy tickets to the restaurant instead of making a reservation. So essentially what's going on here is that this restaurant, run by Grant Achatz, he is named as having the 6th best restaurant in the world in Alinea. That's also in Chicago. And this restaurant essentially shifts the burden of fine dining from the restaurateur, from the chef, and puts it on the diner. And so, for example, say you run an average restaurant in the city, a fine dining restaurant, someone doesn't show up, you lose money. That doesn't happen to Next because you've bought tickets to the restaurant. So if you don't show up, it's you who loses the money, not the restaurant. So again, this is all about burden shifting in a whole lot of respects. There are no choices in the menu, so the restaurant doesn't have to worry about serving, 800 different items. You have to find other people to come with in a very specific number. The restaurant only takes reservations for parties of 2 or parties of 4. You also pay different prices depending on when you eat at the restaurant. Say you want to buy a ticket for Wednesday, it costs about $65 for a 7-course menu. If you buy the same ticket for Saturday night on a prime-time date night, it costs $110. So it's more or less like business class subsidizing economy class. So the question you have to ask yourself, A, is this the food I want? And B, is the burden and the risk worth it for you? Do you want to risk losing this money by not being able to go to the restaurant that night because you made the reservations, 3 months in advance, and all of a sudden you can't make it? Or is it worth it? Because there is an upside. And the upside is that the prices are a little bit cheaper than you would expect at a fine dining restaurant. $65 for a 7-course tasting menu on a Wednesday is a pretty good deal. You'd probably spend, maybe $20 more in New York for that same meal. So again, it's all about risk versus reward, and there's more risk for the diner at this restaurant than usual.
So it's not just like going to other places where you're spending for the ticket to go in, and then you're paying more on top of that.
No, everything is paid for by the time you buy the ticket, and it's online only. People will find that frustrating as well because it can be hard to get on the site. Right now, the number of people who can sign up is locked, and essentially
How many diners did they take in a single evening?
In a single evening, I believe it's a pretty small restaurant. I believe it's around 50 to 70. I can't say for sure. Over the whole reservation period, I think they're going to accommodate 7,500 people for this 3-month menu. And 3 months later, they're going to change the menu again. Right now, it's modern French, and then it's going to be, some say it's going to be Thai. No one really knows what the menu is going to be 3 months from now. It doesn't currently take vegetarians. But like I said, you pay for everything at once. There's a certain cool factor to it. You walk up into the restaurant, you have your meal, you've paid for your wine tastings in advance, they charge a mandatory service fee, and by the time you get out, you just walk out of the restaurant like you own the place. So you don't have to worry about paying at the end of the meal. It looks pretty cool. It's really good for a date.
Yes, glorious food. And he's our glorious dining critic. We have Ryan Sutton with us. He has just returned from America's heartland, from Chicago, with a review of a restaurant called Next, a place where you cannot call for reservations. You must buy tickets online in order to sample the fare at Next. And so how is the food?
The food, for all the risks that are involved to the diner about tickets and what have you, and maybe not even be able to show up, the risks, I think, are worth it because the restaurant serves food that is, for lack of a better term, flawless, which is impressive given that the restaurant is only 2 weeks old. But quite frankly, it better be flawless because the restaurant is going to change its menu 3 months from now. So that's why it justifies the early review. It serves the food of 1906 Paris. They're trying to recreate the menu of Escoffier. He's this really old school French dude. He cooked, I think, strawberry pudding for the Kaiser Wilhelm. He had the good fortune of actually dying in Monte Carlo a few years before the onset of World War II. This was the guy who revolutionized French cuisine, who codified French cuisine. You know, the brigade system that you see in modern restaurants, this guy invented that, Escoffier. So you have old school kind of cream-themed French food. You have, you have filet of sole that's covered in Nantua sauce. Nantua sauce is kind of it's a bechamel, a variant of bechamel. It's going to have a little bit of crawfish butter. So again, when you think of modern Italian food, everyone these days is just slathering their fish in olive oil. Here, they're slathering it in cream, and you think it's going to mute the flavors, but guess what? It's not. It's actually perfectly delicious. You also have, lamb tongue with lamb sweetbreads with lamb loin, and it's covered in something called a Charon sauce. I've never heard of it in my entire life. It essentially tastes like the best version ever of Wendy's special sauce in a majestic way that the Baconator burger can never convey. So this is really good Wendy's special sauce. And of course, you also have some modern elements to this cuisine. We're not serving completely old school. You have liquid nitrogen in
All right, let's get to that part. Liquid nitrogen in 1906 Paris. How do you fit those together?
You don't completely fit them together. To be fair, if you've ever read The Big Fat Duck Cookbook by Eston Blumenthal, there are some people who believe that a type of this, liquid nitrogenous ice cream was actually made in the late 19th century. We can get into historical debates later, but here's how it tastes. It's Sauternes, and instead of adding anything to it, there's no sugar added, there's no lime juice added. It's just pure Sauternes dessert wine, one of the world's most majestic dessert wines, frozen perfectly, no ice crystals like you would in sorbet, no ice crystals like you would have in ice cream, and it melts on the mouth like it's liquid. It's like drinking or eating liquid velvet. It's probably the best.
Blaze from Top Chef.
It's like the best ice cream you've ever had in your entire life, and it's made out of dessert wine. It's perfect.
You can subscribe to Bloomberg's premium podcast service at Bloomberg.com/Tom Keene. And listen to Taking Stock weekday afternoons at 3 Eastern on Bloomberg 1130 in New York or on satellite radio, Sirius Channel 130 and XM Channel 129. Copyright 2011, Bloomberg LP.